Imagine you bought a condo in Austin 2 years ago. You paid $420,000. You put 10% down. Your mortgage rate locked in at 6.8%. Your monthly payment, including HOA, insurance, and taxes, came out to just under $3,200. Today, the identical unit 2 floors above you just listed for $369,000, and it's been sitting there for 74 days without a single offer. That's not a glitch, that's a market telling you something. And across Texas, that same signal is flashing in city after city, quietly, methodically, and with a structural weight that's only beginning to be felt. Days on market are climbing, price reductions are accelerating, inventory is piling up at levels Texas hasn't seen since before the pandemic. And in the condo segment specifically, the asset class that attracted the most speculative demand between 2020 and 2023, the correction isn't coming, it's already here. Before we get into the list, let's be clear about the macro environment driving all of this. Mortgage rates never came back down the way buyers hoped. The 30-year fixed rate has been hovering between 6.4% and 7.1% for most of 2025 and into 2026. That means a buyer today faces a monthly payment wall that simply didn't exist 3 years ago. Someone who locked in at 3.2% in 2021 on a $350,000 property pays roughly $1,510 per month in principal and interest. That same loan today, at 6.8%, costs nearly $2,280 a month, over $750 more every single month for the exact same house. That gap has frozen the market. Sellers who bought cheap won't sell. Buyers who need financing can't afford to buy. And in between, a growing inventory of condos, especially investor-owned units bought at peak prices, is slowly building pressure that has to go somewhere. Texas accelerated this problem by building aggressively during the boom years. Cranes were everywhere. Permits kept coming. And now the market is absorbing that supply while demand has quietly stepped back. Investors are starting to do the math. The numbers aren't working. And when investors move first, which they always do, the psychological shift in a market begins. Here are the 10 Texas cities where that shift is happening fastest.
Number 10. Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi doesn't make national headlines, but it's worth watching because it represents a category of risk that affects coastal Texas markets broadly: insurance cost exposure, combined with modest income demographics. When you buy a condo on or near the Texas Gulf Coast, you're not just buying real estate, you're buying into an insurance market that has repriced dramatically in the last 3 years. Homeowners insurance premiums in coastal Nueces County have surged, in many cases doubling, as carriers reassess hurricane and flood risk. HOA fees for older buildings have also climbed sharply to cover deferred maintenance and rising insurance on the complex itself. The result is a monthly cost of ownership that has quietly crossed the affordability threshold for the local buyer pool. Corpus Christi's median household income doesn't support the payment structure that these condos now demand. Days on market in the condo segment have extended noticeably, and sellers are beginning to offer concessions that weren't on the table 18 months ago. This is a market where the correction starts not with dramatic price cuts, but with silence, properties that simply stop moving.
Number 9. Galveston County. Galveston operates on a different rhythm than inland Texas, but the underlying mechanics of the correction here are accelerating for similar reasons, with one critical difference: the concentration of investor and vacation use buyers. A significant share of condo transactions in Galveston over the past 4 years were not primary residence purchases. They were short-term rental plays, weekend retreat buys, and speculative holds by investors expecting appreciation to continue. When the math changes, when the rental income no longer covers the carrying cost, and when appreciation expectations reverse, those investors don't gradually reduce their asking prices. They list, wait, reduce, and eventually capitulate. That process is underway in Galveston County right now. Inventory in the beachfront and near-beach condo segment has risen well above historical norms. Some complexes have multiple units listed simultaneously, a visible signal of investors exiting the same trade at the same time. When comparables reset downward in that environment, every existing owner's paper equity shrinks alongside. Number 8. Houston. Select inner loop and medical center corridors. Houston as a whole is a massive, complex market, but within it, specific condo corridors are experiencing meaningful pressure. The inner loop and medical center adjacent condo towers that were developed and marketed aggressively between 2019 and 2023 now face a particular kind of competition. They're competing against each other. Multiple buildings with similar amenity packages, similar unit configurations, and similar price points are all fishing in the same buyer pool simultaneously. This creates a comparables reset problem. When one building drops its prices to move inventory, every other building in that corridor gets dragged down with it. Houston also has a notable concentration of investor-owned units in these corridors that were originally intended as short-term rentals, a business model that HOA rule changes and city regulatory pressure have complicated considerably. Investors who can no longer run Airbnb operations are now liquidating into a market that already has more supply than demand. The negotiated discount on listed condos in some Houston zip codes has reached 8% or more below asking. Buyers in this market have real leverage, and smart ones know it. Number 7. Plano, Frisco, and McKinney, the northern DFW suburbs. The northern Dallas-Fort Worth suburbs represent one of the most interesting psychological traps in Texas real estate right now. These were the prestige growth markets of the pandemic era. Corporate relocations, new campuses, highly educated transplants from California and the Northeast. And to serve that demand, developers built townhomes, mid-rise condos, mixed-use projects. The problem is that the wave of corporate arrivals has slowed and the units keep coming. In Frisco and McKinney especially, the condo and attached home inventory has grown substantially, and the buyers who are expected to absorb that supply have found that the monthly payment wall, at current rates, makes ownership in these zip codes simply unworkable at current prices. Price cuts are becoming routine. Days on market in the suburban attached home category have risen sharply year over year, and there's a behavioral shift worth noting. Buyers in this tier are increasingly willing to wait. They've watched prices soften. They believe time is on their side. That belief, once it becomes consensus, is its own form of downward pressure. Number 6. Garland. Garland made the Wolf Street Report's national list of condo markets with notable price declines from their peak, and for good reason. This is a market where affordability was already thin and where speculative buying pressure during the pandemic era pushed prices far beyond what local income levels could sustainably support. The median household income in Garland does not support the condo prices that were established between 2021 and 2023 at a 6.8% mortgage rate. The math simply doesn't work for the primary buyer pool. What's left are investors who bought expecting appreciation, and they're now facing a choice: hold at a monthly loss or sell at a price that may be below what they paid. Some are beginning to choose the latter. When distressed investor sellers enter a market with soft demand, they have a tendency to undercut, not dramatically at first, but enough to reset comparables. In Garland, that reset is happening quietly. Number 5. Fort Worth.
Fort Worth is often framed as the more stable sibling to Dallas, more blue-collar, more grounded, less dependent on tech sector volatility. And structurally, that's partially true, but the condo market in Fort Worth has developed its own distinct vulnerability, an oversupply of units that were developed and marketed as urban lifestyle products, targeting a demographic that has not fully materialized. The near-downtown and cultural district condo projects that launched during the boom years now face a saturated market where demand simply hasn't matched the development thesis. Sellers are hesitant, many still anchored to peak-era price expectations, and the gap between what sellers want and what buyers can pay at today's rates is wide. Real estate agents in Fort Worth are increasingly reporting that sellers who finally accept market reality are having to offer concessions, rate buydowns, closing cost credits, HOA fee prepayments, just to get transactions to close.
That's not a sign of a healthy market. That's a market discovering its real clearing price, one concession at a time.
Number 4. San Antonio. San Antonio's vulnerability is deeply tied to its income demographics relative to the price levels established during the boom. This is not a high-income metro. The median household income in San Antonio is among the lower ends of major Texas cities. And yet, condo prices, driven by investor demand, relocation speculation, and pandemic-era momentum, climb to levels that create genuinely unsustainable price-to-income ratios for local buyers. The market is now correcting that misalignment. Residential prices in the broader San Antonio market have turned negative year over year, and the condo segment is showing particular weakness. What makes San Antonio interesting from a behavioral standpoint is the role of the military and federal employment base. That demographic is stable and employed, but it's also highly payment-sensitive and largely dependent on financing. At 6.8% rates, many of those buyers are simply priced out of the condo market entirely, shifting demand toward older, cheaper single-family product instead. Condos in San Antonio are losing the competition for the buyer's dollar.
Number 3. Dallas Plano Irving Metro Core. The Dallas Metro Core is dealing with a problem that's part supply, part psychology, and part sector concentration. The tech, finance, and corporate services sector that drove Dallas's population growth during the pandemic boom has partially reversed course. Return to office mandates, real ones with teeth, have changed where workers need to live and what they need to live in. The urban condo thesis that drove downtown Dallas development rested on the assumption that remote work flexibility would persist and that young professionals would pay a premium to live close to amenities rather than commute. That assumption has eroded. The buyer profile for Dallas urban condos has narrowed. Meanwhile, the inventory of competing units has not. Downtown and uptown Dallas condo listings are sitting longer. Price reductions are appearing on listings that would have sold in a weekend in 2022. And, perhaps most telling, investors who bought into these projects as short-term appreciators are now hitting the market themselves, creating a secondary wave of supply in complexes that are already struggling to absorb the primary developer inventory. The comparable reset in some Dallas zip codes has already shaved 7 to 9% off peak prices, and that process isn't finished.
Number 2. Arlington. Arlington is one of the few Texas markets that made Wolf Street's national ranking of condo markets with verified, documented price declines, with estimates placing the drop at approximately 14% from peak. That's not a rounding error. That's a structural repricing. Arlington's situation is particularly instructive because it sits at the intersection of several risk factors simultaneously. It's part of the DFW Metro, so it absorbed a wave of speculative condo development during the boom, but it lacks the urban core appeal of Dallas proper or the tech sector magnet of Austin. It was, in many ways, a derivative play, people buying Arlington condos as a cheaper entry point into the DFW growth story. When that story softened, Arlington had less intrinsic demand to fall back on. Days on market have extended sharply. The negotiated discount between listing price and sale price has widened, and the inventory of unsold units is creating a visible, psychologically heavy overhang on the market. When buyers drive through a condo complex and see multiple for sale signs on the same building, something shifts in their decision-making. Urgency evaporates. Offers come in lower. Sellers who don't adapt wait, and waiting costs them more money every month, while the market continues to find its floor.
Number 1. Austin. Austin is the most structurally vulnerable condo market in Texas in 2026, and it earns that position not because of one single risk factor, but because of the convergence of every major risk factor simultaneously. Start with the data. The median condo price in Austin fell approximately 11% year over year by the fall of 2025. Days on market extended by roughly 37% in the same period. Active listing prices were still declining into December 2025. And unlike some Texas markets where the correction is just beginning, Austin's is already deep enough that it has started to alter buyer psychology in a measurable, durable way.
Here's why Austin is different, and why the correction here has a momentum that other cities don't. Austin's condo boom was built on a specific narrative. This is the next Silicon Valley. The tech transplants are coming. Remote work means you can live anywhere, so you live in Austin. Rents will keep rising, prices will keep rising. Get in now or get priced out forever. That narrative drove an extraordinary volume of condo construction. Cranes dominated the Austin skyline for years. Developers competed to build taller, more amenitized, more luxuriously positioned towers, each one marketed as the premium choice in a market that couldn't stop going up. And then the tech sector contracted. Layoffs hit Austin's transplant community hard. Remote work policies reversed. Some workers who had moved to Austin from California and New York, paying peak prices for condos near the Domain or South Congress or East 6th, quietly started to reassess. Some relocated again, some listed their units, and they listed into a market that was simultaneously absorbing thousands of newly completed condo units from the construction pipeline that had been running full speed since 2021.
The result is a market with too much supply, a shrinking qualified buyer pool, and a psychological climate that has shifted from FOMO to hesitation. Picture this scenario. A 38-year-old software engineer, let's call him Marcus, bought a one-bedroom condo in central Austin in early 2022 for $415,000. His company was fully remote. Austin felt like the future. He put 15% down, locked in a 4.1% rate in the window just before rates climbed, and his payment was manageable. Fast forward to 2026. His company has called everyone back to their headquarters in Seattle. Marcus needs to sell. He lists at $398,000, already below what he paid. 3 months later, with no offers, his agent tells him the comparable units in his building just closed at $362,000 and $354,000. His equity has evaporated. He's not underwater, barely, but the closing costs and agent fees will eliminate what's left. He drops his price to $369,000. He waits. Across his building, 4 other units are doing the same calculation. The building now has 5 active listings. Buyers touring the property ask the obvious question, why are so many people leaving at once? The answer, whatever it is, doesn't help close deals. That is how a correction accelerates in the condo segment, not in a crash, but in a cascade. Each new comparable that closes lower gives the next buyer permission to offer lower still. Each new listing that comes to market without selling resets the narrative from Austin always recovers to maybe I should wait. And every month that inventory sits unsold is a month that investor owners who are carrying these properties at a loss are one step closer to cutting their price just to end the bleeding. Austin's condo correction is not speculation, it's arithmetic. And in 2026, the arithmetic is still working against sellers. So here's the question worth sitting with. If you're thinking about buying a condo in Texas right now, or selling one, which side of this math do you want to be on? The market always rewards those who understand the cycle, not those who assume it only goes one direction. If you own a condo in any of these markets, now is the time to be honest about what your numbers actually say. And if you're a buyer, the leverage you have today is real. Use it wisely. If you know someone sitting on the fence about buying or selling a condo in Texas right now, share this with them. The information in this video could save them or cost them tens of thousands of dollars. And if you found this analysis useful, subscribe because this Texas story is far from over, and we'll be tracking every chapter as it unfolds.